Hello and
Hello,
welcome to Please and Take It With You. I am Caitlin Martell.
and I am Bailey Maxwell.
And this week we are going to be talking about the 1999 beautiful classic film, The Mummy.
Boom, boom, boom.
So it was directed by Stephen Sommers. We've got Brendan Fraser as Richard Rick O'Connell, Rachel Weisz as Evelyn Evie Carnahan, John Hannah as Jonathan Carnahan, Arnold Vosloo as Imhotep, Oded Fair as Ardeth Bay, and Kevin J. O'Connor as Benny Gabor. So many other people in this movie. These were just the leading crew.
Our front players.
And so the movie is based loosely on the 1932 movie of the same title starring Boris Karloff. The Mummy came out in 1999. We open on a flashback of High Priest Imhotep and his lady love, the Pharaoh's wife, who her name is
Anaxunamun.
Thank you. Anaxunamun.
Got you, girl.
I didn't write it in my blurb. It's in one of my notes.
This is like ancient Egypt. This is back in the
Yes.
day when we see Imhotep and an
So
Anaxunamun.
our quote unquote present day part of the movie is set in 1926, I believe, or 28. 20s. So this is 300 years prior.
Yeah.
So High Priest Imhotep and his lady love having an affair, and they get caught by the pharaoh essentially, and then the two lovers murder him, and then Imhotep, so Anaxunamun dies by suicide. She stabs herself, takes herself out of the equation, and Imhotep is immediately punished for his traitorous actions and is cursed for eternity by being buried alive in Hamunaptra, which is the city of the dead. Hop, skip, and a jump to 300 years down the road in 1923. I'd read my notes. We are introduced to English librarian and Egyptologist Evie, her brother Jonathan, and our American adventurer Rick. Evie becomes interested in starting an archaeological dig in the ancient city of Hamunaptra. Rick knows where to go, and after literally saving his life, Evie gains his assistance. Added conflict of a secondary team of explorers racing to do the same thing, and as you would expect, the team accidentally unleashes the curse that has been laid on Imhotep, and now his mummy is running around wreaking havoc, and it is fun games for everyone involved, really.
No harm ever came from reading a book.
No.
A la Hocus Pocus, a la The Mummy.
A la every good movie ever.
I love this movie. It really is. And it was so funny because when I was researching for this, I had felt this way as a kid, but a lot of people mentioned that this is sort of like the fourth Indiana Jones movie that we deserved. You know what I mean? It's so,
and yet it's its own thing.
It's its own thing, but it has that Indiana Jones vibe to it, which I loved Indiana Jones as a kid, which bears evidence for why I was so obsessed with this one.
So the funny thing that I'm glad you brought up Indiana Jones, because there's and I assume it's intentional because it seems way too on the nose to not be, but the lead American explorer, and I wrote his name down. Give me 2 seconds. I will find him somewhere.
Are you talking about Stephen Dunham?
Yes, Stephen Dunham. Not Cary Elwes. He just looks like him. He really does. He's basically dressed like Indiana Jones, in every scene. And I was like,
yeah,
that was done on purpose. And I love it.
I see you. He was actually up for the Rick O'Connell role that Brendan Fraser ended up playing, but he unfortunately passed away back in 2012.
So sad.
It's a bummer, but he had done this, and apparently they noted how great of an actor he was. I think they created the role of Mr. Henderson for him because they liked him so much.
Well, and he gets quite a lot to do as a member of the other team. This movie is so good, and I will never tolerate anyone saying it is anything other than the best, because it has everything in it.
For me, what stands out the most is, I mean, obviously the special effects, but
Mhm,
the writing for this film, Stephen Sommers, I wrote most of it. He directed it,
mhm,
directed it and wrote most of it. And there were some other a team of writers for storyline and stuff as
mhm,
well. But I would say for the most part, he is credited for writing the screenplay. And he was able to walk such a beautiful line of comedy and horror in that
mhm,
while disgusting things are happening, you're not so grossed out by it that
mm-mm,
you're like unable to enjoy the storyline. And it's
mhm.
so funny that it keeps it light enough.
Oh,
It
it's
doesn't get too like cringy,
mhm.
too intense,
Well, I think it's so great because
which is
this
great.
movie, it's every genre somehow. And I think
Mhm.
that's what makes it so good is that it's action, it's adventure, it's romance, it's horror, it's comedy, it has a cat. Like, plus, it's a
It has a
period
cat.
piece.
Yes. And
Like
female empowerment. We have this great character of
Evie.
Evie, who is so, we will have a whole talk about her, but the writing is so well
Mhm,
done, even down to John Hannah, who plays Jonathan.
mhm,
He's such a great, chaotic, neutral character
mhm,
that causes this chaos and is there sort of throughout. And it's so cleverly done because you don't
mhm.
hate him. It's just like,
No,
oh,
and you're not
oh,
even like, what
Jonathan,
an
how dare you?
idiot. Like there are so many times that I feel like if he wasn't such an endearing character, and
Mhm,
by that respect, an endearing performer, like
mhm.
you would just be like, Jonathan, why are you even here?
Why are we friends with him?
Why, who brought him? But he's not, and you
He's
love
not.
him. He's
Yeah,
adorable, he's hilarious. And it
we
was so
really are
funny.
along for the ride
Truly,
with him.
we are all Jonathan. Like we all want to think that we're Rick or we're Evie.
We're Evie.
We're really Jonathan.
We're
We're
Jonathan.
sitting
I'm
there.
Benny. I don't know about you. I'm Benny.
Okay, well, I'm Jonathan. I'm sitting there having a drink going, but the man said, stay here as I run after the person. He said, stay here.
uh, the writing is so great, and everyone plays their part so well. It is so well cast,
Mhm.
um, which makes it so. I was super impressed with Arnold Vosloo, who plays the mummy, and sort of the groundbreaking things that they did with special effects on this film, because it had to be so difficult to not only play a high priest,
Mhm.
but to have to work with, which had not been done before, be working wearing
Nothing.
CGI sensors or
Mhm.
nothing, but with this technology on you,
Mhm.
working with makeup. I know they talked about how it, if they could do it with a prosthetic, they did a prosthetic. But
Mhm.
if there was something that they wanted to do
With the
CGI, it had to
CGI.
be something cool. It had to
Mhm.
be something intense. So they worked with makeup to incorporate sensors on especially his cheek thing,
They
to
also
help
had
blend the
they
mediums together,
they
which is
tried to make
brilliant.
it not gory, which I thought was really
Hmm.
interesting. They made sure that he wasn't gory,
Hmm.
and so much so that they even had like gore tests. um
Yes, the
they had
gore
like
test.
gore tests for his
How much
makeup,
is too
and
much?
like, is this
Yeah.
too icky? Okay, we'll
Because
stop
in
at
the
the scarab.
original,
The scarab is the
yeah,
ickiest thing we'll do.
they really wanted to shy away from what the 1932 mummy was.
Mhm.
They didn't just want it to be a guy wrapped in bandages, and
Right.
specifically the company that they worked with was called Industrial Light and Magic, or ILM.
Mhm.
And together they wanted to create a monster that just hadn't been seen on stage before. And I loved that they had started with the organs, because he
Mhm.
starts out as this sort of skeleton, and
Mhm.
originally they had more to him, his organs and
Mhm.
innards, but they sort of took all that out, which not only helped with the gore factor, I'm sure,
Mhm.
but it created this super creepy, transparent, indestructible monster, which
Mhm.
is
Well, and it's so
terrifying.
interesting, and I love that they made a new kind of monster that's not a mummy because he's actually never mummified. The
Not
movie is
mummified,
called
the
The
only,
Mummy.
yeah,
He's not a mummy.
only one not mummied.
He's the only one.
Maybe he's trying. It's about a Nox and a Moon's mummy, so
That's
that's
it's very meta.
that's it.
Oh goodness.
But
Um
I love that they did that. It was a whole new. kind of monster. And
Mhm.
to think like now, I think it's easy to watch the movie and be sort of unimpressed because you're like, we have Marvel, we have, we have all of these incredible CGI
Mhm.
things, but this was the first,
Well,
what
it
they did with that mummy, they were able to create layers of
Mhm.
muscles, tendons, tissues, you know, you, building this using digital media, while having him wear the suits that now, we've seen people wear for Lord of the Rings and yada, yada, yada.
Mhm.
But this was the first, and that's so impressive for a
Yeah,
movie like
they
this.
launched this sort of like action adventure era, and it's something we don't really get anymore, and I
Mhm,
think that is again what has made it such a like beloved thing of its own.
mhm,
People love this particular movie, and the differences between the Mummy in 1999 and every action adventure movie that has pretty much been made ever since is that it had a tone that doesn't exist anymore. Everything else takes itself almost too seriously, and and
mhm.
there's this like grit and grunge to it that it didn't have. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of its charm. And then on top of that, sure, the CGI isn't quite what we can do today in
Mhm.
2021, but it still holds up pretty well.
It's real
Like,
good.
it's
It's
still
real good.
really good for 1999, and like to
Mhm.
be pioneering so much of this.
Mhm.
And it's
And it
so
was so
cool.
beautiful because they layered the CG with in real life,
Hmm.
the beetles coming out of the ground, they use
Hmm.
an air compressor to create, those sand blasts
Hmm.
and, to seem like they were growing out of the ground, which is just so clever. Um, I had no idea Brendan Fraser, he did that whole mummy fight scene where Evie's lying on
With
the slab
nobody.
with nobody,
It's
with nobody.
choreographed.
And they put in all the mummies later. And I'm like, and they even commented on it in one of the interviews. The a special effects guy was like, Brendan worked so well, making everything seem
Mhm.
so natural and did such a great job with the choreography that it was so easy to put in these
These
high
other
priests that he was fighting or
mummies
whatever
and
mummies he was dealing with.
yeah,
So
no, I
clever.
read that and I was like, good for Brendan. Like, not only is the whole cast having to work off of like pictures of Arnold Vosloo to
This
just
is
be
what he
like,
looks like.
this is what you're afraid of. And but he's having an entire fight sequence with like 30 mummies,
Mm,
none of whom are there,
no,
and he's still acting, like
doing such a good job.
it's so amazing, and it's just this like big choreographed dance. And I mean, I think somewhere in my notes I have the fight choreographer just did such an amazing job in this
Mhm,
entire movie.
mhm,
It's just so interesting because on top of that, and choreographing his entire fight sequence, which goes on for quite a while, like this is the climax of the movie,
mhm.
is this particular scene, which took, I can't remember, like 9 days to film. It took a ridiculous amount of time to film just that scene. um but it's just such good fight choreography. There's never a moment where a fight isn't both exciting and also kind of funny
Mhm.
without turning it into a spoof comedy.
I loved that they incorporated even like the live locusts
Hmm.
and what was the other oh, the rats. They had
Hmm.
she really had rats on her in that when she's on
Hmm.
the slab, Evie's on the slab.
Horrifying.
Um,
I read
so
1984.
that scene with the locusts and what's the actor who played he was on the team with the Americans and he's just covered in locusts and he quotes and the plagues
Uh-huh.
shall yada yada yada. He's like quoting the Bible about the plagues. And he's like covered head to toe in locusts. And I read that he had to film that several times because he couldn't sit still. And I
No.
was like, it's cringy to
Fair.
watch that like 3-second shot. I can't.
Ugh.
And I remember thinking when I watched it this last time, I was like, he's being so still while he says this. So he's got the heebie
Just
jeebies. He's not having a
cringing.
good time right now.
No,
This is not fun. And
not
that
having
brings me
fun.
joy. That brings me a little joy.
It brought everyone joy. He did
Because
it
I'm
for
like, you're a
us.
bad guy. You're a bad guy character. I'm sorry, your real life guy had to go through some trauma, but your character deserved it.
Oh,
It's
good
so
Lord.
good. I love the way that the mummy regenerated. They didn't.
Yes,
He
little by
like
little.
starts out gummy and gross. Well, he's, can we call him the mummy? Imhotep. I
Well,
love the
yeah,
way that
Imhotep
Imhotep gradually
regenerates.
regenerates, because it starts with that gummy skeleton that they comment on, which is so funny.
Juicy. Evie's
Ugh.
like, oh, he's juicy.
Thanks. But then he graduates to the man with a hole in his cheek, which is the most disgusting part to me, especially when that beetle crawls up and he through his cheek and he eats it. It's so nasty.
Sure.
So nasty. Okay. So a scene got deleted from that kind of to help tie in the whole Beatles thing, because they talk about how the Beatles were used in his mummification process because they ate him slowly.
Right.
And then in the deleted scene, they go on to explain that they ate him, but then he would eat the Beatles.
So it
for
was
like
just this
sustenance. So they
cycle.
became immortal too.
Oh.
So whereas they would normally eat humans like slowly, when they come back 300 years later, they're devouring people in like seconds. So that was the whole time with the Beatles, which we don't really get. They're sort of just, you just sort of understand that
they're
the
like
Beatles
these
are
Hercules
Beatles.
Beatles.
And you just accept that in the movie. But
what's interesting about the Scarab Beetles in particular is that their design was achieved by taking the quote unquote worst traits of certain insect species. So like they took the like pinchers of one and the movements of another and like combined them all digitally to make some horrifying hell beetle.
Oof. And each of those beetles are made individually and graphically in the computer graphics. Individual beetles. There's so many beetles. They're probably, that's like the worst part of the movie when he goes in, the warden, the annoying guy. That's disgusting, which is so well played. He did such a good job. I can't remember who that guy is.
He's a comedian.
He is, and that was like his first movie, wasn't it?
Yes, it was like his debut.
Omid Jalili. I know I'm not pronouncing that right, but that's who he is. He played Warden God Hassan. He is so funny. He's so disgusting. It's so perfect, hilarious, but you just die because he's so gross and annoying.
His he has the line about he hates bugs, and then
I don't like
bugs. The bugs.
That this movie does a lot of foreshadowing. You have the library disaster where everything falls down, sort of mirrors the fall of Hymenoptera at the end. He says he doesn't like bugs, and then of course the
guy with the glasses has a line early on where he's like, I can't see without my glasses, and then he gets his eyes like
of course loses his glasses and gets his eyes eaten.
Yikes. Poor guy.
Benny, she's like, men like you always get their comeuppance. And he's like, they do. And then he 100% dies.
He does.
In the temple. Oof. The
Goodbye,
foreshadowing.
Benny.
Goodbye, Benny.
Goodbye, Benny.
Love that line.
He says it 3 times. It's so good.
Goodbye, Benny.
Goodbye, Benny.
So well placed. Each a different interpretation.
I just like the end where Rick legitimately tries to get him out, and then he does. There is a beat, and he goes, goodbye, Benny, and just runs.
Like, all right, well, I tried, did my best, gotta go, bye.
Sorry.
Also, Betty had left him hanging multiple times. So we feel bad for like 2 seconds, but good efforts, Brendan Fraser.
So speaking of the special effects, while we're still on that, the scene where the fire and hail fall down on Cairo, that was actually accomplished using dried dog food that had been painted white and thrown down on the set. I'm just like,
gross.
I can already
probably just smelled like Edmond, Oklahoma on a warm day with the wind blowing from the southeast.
It did.
Dog food.
It did.
So clever though. So clever.
Smart.
Disgusting. But
yeah, dog food. That scene is dog food.
I wanted to shout out the makeup artist who did the body paint for
Anoxuna Moon.
Patricia Velasquez, who played Anoxuna Moon. I can't, I lost her name. I really wish I could find it. I'm sure it's like in the credits if I scrolled forever. But this girl, so proud of her. That body paint that
Mhm.
Anoxina Moon wears is so beautiful. Well done. But also we were joking. Why the paint?
Well,
Because
but
the whole thing is that Anoxina Moon is fully painted head to toe so that if anyone
I mean,
touches
she's
her,
literally
you would
wearing a
know
loincloth and
because
some jewelry. Like that's the
she got
physical
some
items.
pasties on and a
Some
loincloth.
pasties, a loincloth, some jewelry, and a lot of body paint that never
Mhm.
dries? Question
Question. So it's just moist body paint, and she's expected to like not brush. I'm clumsy. I would walk into a doorway. You know what I mean? I'd brush up against a plant. I'd lay down on a couch, and that thing would be ruined. And he's like, "Someone has touched you," and I'm like, "No, I just ran into the doorstop on my way out of the bathroom."
I'm sorry,
And
but
she's
like,
like,
here's
"I
the
don't know
thing.
what you're
I
talking
don't
about."
know, and I'm like, girl, you touched it. Oops.
Lie better. Like I got
I took a
cold.
nap.
I'm naked.
I took a nap. You know, like when your like mascara like smudges down your cheek a little. Like
Yes. And you're
I
like,
took a
I'm a
nap.
beautiful girl.
But like,
No, but
here's the
she straight
thing.
up is the worst liar.
Amanoff is like the voiceover is like, and he killed anyone who touched her. And I'm like, okay, so we're meaning this sort of like metaphorically. And then like literally, Imhotep lays a hand on her, smudges her paint. We get a big shot of that happening. And then he goes, someone touched you? And I'm like, oh, he meant literally, like
He is
nobody
so
can,
mad.
don't look at her, don't touch her, don't move a
She's
hair on her head,
mine.
don't move a hair. And I'm just like, so his solution was to cover her in eternally wet body paint.
That's what we need to be doing. Ladies, if you're concerned,
That takes 4 hours to apply. Like
no.
that's how long it took to put on poor Patricia Velasquez. Like,
Listen, I mean, at this point, I
4
gotta say,
hours.
like, I don't feel sorry for you, Pharaoh. You really
You
lost
set yourself up.
you lost your girl on this one. You can't create boundaries like
You,
that.
her makeup call was at 6 a.m.
Oh no.
Like
And she's not really in, I mean, she's in the movie a
she's in the
substantial amount,
beginning and then
but
she's
she
a mummy at
dies.
the end.
Yeah, she dies in the beginning within the first 15 minutes. So anything that you see is either like a quick flashback or her as a mummy. So you don't really see her long. She doesn't have a long screen time until the second one, which
Which
is
we get a lot
also
more
a
of
gem.
her.
Yeah, so much more
Um,
of her. And she's does so well in that one.
while we're talking about costumes,
Yes.
the so Evie has a white nightgown on the boat,
Mm-hmm.
and it actually got wet during the attack on the ship, and it was very transparent, and so it had to be digitally edited to be white so that they could hold on to their PG-13 rating.
I just want to know what costumer was like, you wanted a white nightgown, and they're like, for the water scene. And she was like, you
And
didn't
then
tell me about the
they dress
water.
her in black the rest of the movie.
We don't need Rachel giving us a rated R rating. Okay. Rachel, clothe up, put on something black and opaque.
Yeah, no,
Oh
so they had
my
to
gosh.
digitally edit her nightgown.
I love
And
that.
then, okay, so this is my favorite fun fact about that I learned in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the Magi were originally supposed to be covered from head to toe with tattoos.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Stephen Summers actually saw Oded Fair, he's like, no, vetoed. This man would be a damn crime to cover his face. He is beautiful. And so we're going to change that.
You get
Literally
3 face tats, and
he said 2 under the eye, 1 on the forehead. That's it.
that's all you need.
1 on the wrist that we'll never see.
That's what you need. I also I like how Oded Fair is like, how do you have a name that is more interesting than your Magi character name? Like Ardith Bay next to Oded Fair. Are you
Sure.
kidding?
However, I got a fun
Oded.
fact about Ardeth Bay. It's
Wasn't that
actually it's an anagram for death by Ra.
Oh,
So he actually does have an
oh.
interesting name,
I mean,
funny
it's
because
interesting, but it's not like
I mean,
phonetically
it's
interesting.
phonetically no. Oded Fair is like, mwah,
I mean,
chef's
Ardeth Bay
kiss.
is interesting, but not standing next to Oded Fair.
No, but
What a
the
name.
Ardeth Bay is an anagram for Death by Ra, and I was
I
like,
love
that
that.
is cool.
Oh, because that was the original mummy's
Mm.
name. It wasn't Imhotep.
Well, so Ardeth Bay,
Right?
this is we're dipping into a little bit of the nods to the original. So his character is named Ardeth Bay, which is the same name that the mummy used in 1932 when he's disguised as a regular person.
That's right. Okay.
So that's that
That's
tieback
right.
as well, but it is an anagram, which I'm like, that's cool. It's a cool little
Death by Ra.
tidbit.
I love that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the character of Evie at this point and sort of the beautiful way that she has been portrayed in this movie. I found this really great article that was written by Grace Duffy on themarysue.com, which I don't know if you've ever found this website. It's basically like nerd information for like feminists.
Cool.
For feminist characters. So they have like articles and blogs and they talk about movies and games and stuff. But I thought it was really interesting and I had never seen it before. So I'll have to keep checking it out. But Grace Duffy wrote for them this article where she talks about Evelyn's character and how her goal through the whole film remains the same. You know, she wants to find the book of Amun-Ra so that she can be a scholar. She wants to, you know, the Bembridge scholars that she applied to rejected her because she didn't have enough field experience. And she's like, well, I'll go get some field experience if that's what you want. And goes to find this book in this, you know, historic city. And that is true because even when, you know, she's not there for the treasure like Jonathan is, you know, she's not there to exploit the city, like she's truly there to study it and to
find this book.
Yeah, to find this book, gain experience, be the scholar that she knows she is. She never doubts her abilities.
That's what's so interesting is that she's allowed this like unwavering belief in her abilities. Like she at no point thinks that she is unqualified. She at no point thinks that she shouldn't be there for any reason. You know, even considering herself to not be as, you know, as interesting in her family or as successful in her family, she still is very confident in her abilities. And I love that they allow her that. And there's only one scene in which she appears dejected. And it's when she tells Jonathan that she was rejected by the Bembridge scholars. And, you know, it's a really good like narrative decision that they made that the moment, because it's her frustration doesn't stem from like a lack of confidence.
I'm not good enough.
Yeah, it's not a lack of confidence in her abilities. She's just disappointed they're not being recognized.
Yeah, she's like, they don't know me.
I love that.
And she is Evelyn's character is the catalyst for the whole script. I mean, she commissions the trip. She reads from the Book of the Dead that brings, you know, Imhotep back. She stays when everyone else is trying to flee. She's like, no,
put that thing back where it came from, or so help me.
She said, no, get it back in the ground. We got to do this.
I did this. I got to fix it.
She sacrifices herself. She goes with Imhotep so that her friends can escape. And she helps Jonathan translate the text at the end while she's fighting
off Noxunamun.
Noxunamun is a mummy. And,
like
and
being
then she ends up
holded by this mummy. And she's like, no, it means this. Like she's constantly correcting people's pronunciation and translation the whole movie. And she's like, no, you... what? No.
She's like, guys, come on. Have you read nothing?
Have you read nothing from ancient Egypt? It's this.
Yeah, I love that. And her character was based on a real person, Evelyn Carnahan, who was the daughter of the explorer that discovered King Tut's burial space.
And they allude to that in the movie where she talks about her parents being like famous explorers.
But
they never say it outright.
Yeah, it's not like official. This is not official,
Mhm.
obviously. This is a fiction movie. There are no mummies that have come back to life
No,
thus
that we
far.
know. No.
But yeah, she is so good. And Rachel Weisz is one of the best actresses. She's so effortless and stunning.
She
And
makes Evie so delightful and
yes.
charming. And
Mhm.
that's the other thing.
And controlled, even though she is a
So,
little clumsy. She is, she's a
mhm,
little unworldly. She
mhm.
doesn't get kind of some of the things, but she's so calm and sure of herself and so charming.
It's just so good. And the writing really supports what I am sure was mostly brought by Rachel Weisz. But the
Mhm.
fact that they, in the writing, allow Evie to have her own agency in this movie,
Mhm.
and just, being who she is and being competent in her
Mhm.
field, and having other characters recognize that is really delightful. And I feel like we don't get that as often anymore, which
Mhm.
seems super backwards because this was 1999. You would think that we've only come farther since then. We have not.
Right.
One day, but she's
Mhm.
allowed to be, she's, you know, visually coded to be very feminine. She does all
Mhm.
of this with this long hair, and she's in dresses most of the time, but they never encumber her in any way. None
Mhm.
of it is encumbering. It doesn't even factor into what she's capable of doing.
Mhm.
She just is that way. This is what she likes. This is what
Yeah.
she looks like. And I just think that's lovely. And she purposefully, like, she's
And
never the passive victim. She
right.
purposefully
And
becomes the
even the
damsel in
love
distress.
story, even the romance aspect, she's not making herself smaller for
Mm-mm.
Rick. She is there for her mission. And if she happens to fall in love, what a
As a
lovely
side
surprise.
benefit.
Yeah. But
And
but she's not changing anything. She's very honest with him, and their banter is,
her goal
if
never
anything,
changes.
he straightens up a little bit to be like, oh, I can't be
Well,
an
it's
animal
so
around
funny, and we
her.
can kind of transition to talking about how delightful Brendan Fraser is,
Mm,
because the man
yes.
is an angel as far as I am concerned.
So good.
I just love. It's such a stretch in the first like scene that you meet, like really meet Rick, and
Mhm.
he's just the worst.
So,
And you
so
can tell
gross.
that it's like this is very unnatural for Brendan Fraser. Like he's this is the most acting he's having to do in this movie.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite parts. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is, so the scene starts with the American explorers looking over at this crew, and they're like, do they know something we've got? And he's like, they're led by a woman. What do women know? And then it
Oh.
pans over, and the immediate next thing that happens is Rick is like, hey, Evie, I found these tools on our American friends and I took them. Here you go. I thought you might like them
You
because
want
they're
this?
things that you use. And she's like, oh. And I think it's so delightful that this other team doesn't give her the time of day because she is a woman. And Rick is like, I'm going to pinch these tools because these guys suck. And
And this
also,
girl likes to dig.
I recognize in you this proficiency, and these tools are for you. I know nothing about what to do with these tools. I have guns, and that's my contribution.
So, hammer and chisel for you,
And she's like,
guns for
oh,
me.
thank you.
I love when she gets accused of, he's like, hey, those are mine. And she's like, I beg your pardon.
These are mine.
And she 100% knows they're stolen at
He
that
told
point.
her. He said,
And is
I
still
stole
like,
them.
but they're mine.
They're mine. He
I
gave
would,
them to me.
I'm keeping them.
So
I
good.
also love her line when he's like, and what are you? And she's, a little drunk. And she's like,
I'm
I
a
am a
librarian.
librarian.
And so proud.
So
She
proud of
is
it. She
so
really thinks
pleased.
about it. And it's like, I am a librarian. Dang it.
I know things.
I am so smart. She's so good. I
That is
love
such a
her.
good scene. And it is, you know
It
what?
really
Brendan
is.
Fraser is the king of being utterly charmed by his female co-stars.
Mm-hmm.
Every movie that he is in, he has mastered just looking absolutely dazzled by whoever is in the scene with him that is his female co-star. Like, he is just like, I would love to hear everything you have to say.
I think so he did George of the Jungle before, right
1997.
before The Mummy.
Yes.
And I think the director had seen him and was like, commented that he did such a good job of not taking his character too seriously, but not making it a joke.
Yeah, it's not a joke.
And with George of the Jungle, which we both had actually rewatched recently. So George of the Jungle is Brendan Fraser and Leslie Mann. It's so good. It's so good. But he did in that show sort of have a similar, where he is sort of a goofy guy, but is serious too.
I just love that the role of Rick, and it was offered to a lot of high profile actors, like
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well, we had
would have been
Tom Cruise, who did get his shot. We don't talk about it. Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Chris O'Donnell, Matthew McConaughey, and Sylvester Stallone, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio, all had been in talks for this role. And so it ends up going to Brendan Fraser. And I'm like, none of those were wrong choices. But I don't think the movie would have done as well if that hadn't been Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Because Brendan Fraser is so interesting that they've put him in this role that is, very, very masculine presenting, and it's, he's
hero type,
intrepid, adventurer, and he's kind of a dork. Like, he's a little doofy. He's very competent at fighting, and he knows this. He never tries to be the leader because he knows he's not. The only time he is
like, I am
when
the
they're in a fight.
Brains and brawn.
Yeah.
Why him and Evie work so well together.
And that's the thing, is everyone, Jonathan, Rick, and Evie, they all know their place in the group. Evie knows she is the leader. Rick knows that he is the leader when it is a fight and if Evie is not around. That is the only time Rick is the star of the movie, is when Evie is otherwise
He does such
busy.
a good job of like being the brawn, but also having a good wit about the situation. You know what I mean? He's able to kind of comment on the bigger picture of things, which obviously is, an ode to the writing.
Right.
But I do love that about him, that he has those great one-liners in the midst of battle, or in the midst of a fight, and he's throwing out these little
my favorite thing about Rick O'Connell is that he never stops trying to shoot things when it is proven to have not worked. And when he shoots it and it doesn't work, he just yells at it. He just screams.
I love that part.
But then he knows when to get out of dodge, because he screams at this mummy multiple times. Like, there are plenty of times where the mummy like screams in his face and he just screams right back, which is comedy. But then at the end, he screams at the army of mummies. They scream back and he goes, nope, and gets out.
Gotta go.
He runs the other way.
I'm not doing this. I am not doing this.
He knows his strengths.
I did read that the director took out kidnapping insurance on some of the actors, but like didn't tell them.
Yeah, didn't tell them.
But apparently this was normal.
Yeah.
That's something. That's another finger that you wouldn't have to put down. And never have I ever had kidnapping insurance taken out
on me. So the
Rachel
library
Weisz is like, oh.
The library disaster that introduces our favorite gal, Evie. It was done in completely one take. And if there had been a mistake, it would have taken an entire day to reshoot. Like, an entire day. And I just watched that and I'm stressed for that camera person.
So this movie costs $80 million. And 15, we already talked about this. The
No.
15 million of that went to Industrial Light and Magic.
Yeah. We did not talk about it, but
We didn't
yeah.
talk about it. Okay, yeah. $15 million of an $80 million budget went to Industrial Light and Magic for the special effects on this
Mhm.
movie. And it was like $125,000 per special effect shot. That's an expensive shot
It
right
is.
there.
It
That is so
it
much
paid
money.
off. You know what was interesting is that
Clearly.
they did this whole movie and they were kind of like, solid shrug. We don't really know if people are going to be interested. And they had kind of signed off at the end and been like, I don't know. It was fun, you guys. and then the commercial aired during, I believe, the Super Bowl was the like premiere of the Mummy.
Oh, cute.
Like the Mummy trailer. And I believe Stephen Summers got a call afterwards that was like, oh, this is gonna be like millions in opening weekend. Like,
yay.
This is gonna be a big deal. And then it launched a franchise. Like, that's the thing, is so many
the
movies
day that it
now.
opened was when they called Stephen and said, we need another one. We're doing another one.
Well, and that's what's so interesting is that they didn't set up to do a franchise, which I think so many movies now do. They set it up because they're like, we want a franchise. And this movie was like, we're good.
We love our movie. It's so special and precious.
And then they were like, we want more. And they were like, oh, okay.
But yeah, I love it. If you haven't seen it, go give it a gander. It's a classic for me. And I know a lot of people our age.
There's a cat
really
in
good.
it.
And it's good for a family movie. It's, great to watch with your family. It was a family favorite for us.
I wore my cat shirt because there is a white cat in this film who the Mummy is very afraid of.
The cat's name was
cat's name was Cleo, but they didn't name it in the film.
Right.
They named it in a novelization after the fact. And I'm like, I love that they named it Cleo. Is it Cleocatra? But like Cleocatra.
Cleocatra?
That's what I'm naming her.
No, I was like, I didn't know that. Oh,
no, they named her Cleo. Okay. I'm just
like
being
Cleopatra.
punny. But like
Cleopatra.
Whose cat was it though? Like, this cat was just suddenly there.
I know, and it was like Evelyn's cat, like in her apartment, and I'm like, she didn't bring a cat to Hominoptera.
She doesn't live here.
So I assume it's just some stray cat that she said,
beautifully
I'm
white,
your mother now.
White stray cat. And Rick's just like, here you go.
What happens to the cat is what I need to know.
He lives there.
He lives there now. I love that.
This is his home. But yes, the Mummy, we love it. It is wonderful.
Please, take it with you.
If you are having a Friday night, a Saturday night, a Tuesday night, a date night, whatever, the Mummy will fit all of your needs. All movies should be rated from 1 to the Mummy because it is that good.
Absolutely.
I will take that stance.
I concur. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. And we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.
Please and take it with you.
Please and take it with you. See ya.
Bye.